Hello and welcome back to Raise the Trident. My name is Jake, and today I am here with the beat writer for the Seattle Mariners for the Seattle Times, Adam Jude, his first time ever being on this channel. So first of all, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We've been trying to set this up throughout the offseason and really appreciate you having me, Jake. This should be fun.
Of course. Yeah, it's really nice to be able to sit down with you. Someone who is there every single day around this team, around this club. Me and the other content creators and just fans in general who are on social media. I mean, we can talk all we want about what's going on with the team, but you are one of the people who knows this club better than anyone when it comes to just kind of the day to day, how these guys are feeling. And spring training's finally here after a very long and boring off season, frankly, for the most part. So what are kind of the main things you're noticing right now in these first few days of camp?
Yeah, spirits are high, and I think you'd say that in the first week of every camp around baseball right now, all 30 clubs, and I think you could say that for the start of probably every Mariners camp for the last now 50 years. But to me, there is a little bit different vibe here, different feeling, just because of what they accomplished last year, and because they're all virtually all back, and you've got this core group of guys. They know who they are, and I think you hear this organization talk about that a lot. Is just kind of know your identity, know what you're good at, know what your strengths are, and play to those. And I think this group knows it's a strong team, top to bottom. I think put the finishing touches on the roster last week with the Brendan Donovan trade. Was exactly what we've been trying to do, not only all this offseason, but if you listen to the front office, they've been trying to get him for years now, and same with Jose Ferrer. But it really does feel like it completes this roster, it completes the lineup. Doesn't mean there's certainty at every spot, in the 9 spots in the lineup, but I think they know they're darn good. I think they know they're the favorites in the AL West. They should be one of the favorites in the American League, and you hear more and more talk about the World Series, and guys are not just saying it flippantly, but they're saying it earnestly. And because they were right at the doorstep, in October, I feel like they probably should have been in it, and they feel like they should be right in the conversation again this year. So there's just a kind of an confidence about this group, about this team right now, and I think they're certainly itching to go.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear that they kind of have a different mindset going into this year. I'd imagine in years prior, there was still kind of that hump you need to get over of win the division. You still kind of have the Astros in your way, you feel like. And now, not only did you kind of slay that dragon finally, it makes you feel more free, and you can kind of push your expectations onto bigger and better things like the World Series and finally getting there. So I guess one of my biggest things, you touched on a little bit in an article today where you and Ryan Divish were answering 5 different questions about expectations for this year and all that. And you had a quote saying, coming off the sting of a Game 7 loss, they know how good they are and how good they can be, and they're embracing those expectations. And as a fan, obviously, I love to hear that, in the sense of, the way they get eliminated in such a devastating fashion. There's the clip that went viral of Julio just with that guttural scream in the, the clubhouse after, when all the interviews were taking place, and you just see the dejection on all of their faces, basically. And to have them coming back to camp, and instead of kind of still sulking and still upset, they're taking that as motivation. So, like, what have you seen that is really just embodying that for you?
I think maybe the biggest thing that jumps out is just there's so many guys here. It's a little bit different schedule this year because of the World Baseball Classic, and the Mariners have so many dudes flying off here in a couple of weeks to the WBC for different teams. I think they have 16 guys, or as of count right now. Some of those guys are just on the preliminary rosters or whatever, but there's different report dates for the WBC pitchers and the WBC position players, and then the full team reports, I think, on Monday. There's so many different dates, but the fact that the majority of the team has already been here early this week reporting. Brendan Donovan, less than a week after getting traded, lives in Florida, flew across country, getting his family settled, getting here, wanted to meet everybody, said it's important for him to feel comfortable. So again, I just, you can talk generically about the sting of that loss and just, how it motivates guys in the off season. Like, it's easy to say. It's another thing to go out and kind of put in the work and kind of show it. And they won't really get a chance to do that until March 26th or whatever, an opening day. But again, there are at least some signs, and they can say the right things And again, part of that is showing up here early, putting in the work. Cal's doing what he's always done. He's basically first in the building, last to leave. And again, that's cliche, but even Brendan Donovan said that the other day. Like, he's like, I thought I got here pretty early, and then I saw Cal Raleigh was already here, and then I thought I was staying pretty late to get my work in. I'm walking out the door, I realized Cal Raleigh's still here. And so for a new guy to kind of recognize that right away, obviously Cal's a guy who not only sets the tone, for the lineup or for the pitching staff, but in so many ways sets the tone for this entire organization right now. And I really believe that's true in so many different ways. He's so invested. But right now it does feel like everyone's kind of following Cal's lead. He was putting in the work throughout the offseason. He's talked about it. We saw him at all the Seahawks games and Kraken game. I think he went to football game. He did some charity type things too, and stuff that wasn't as necessarily he was doing for publicity. And I think that reverberates too. Like, he's invested. And again, when your best player, when a guy who's just coming off this enormously historic season, like, I do think there's a trickle down effect to the rest of the guys and the rest of the organization too. Like, hey, we mean business. Hey, put your head down. It's time to get to work.
And kind of touching on that theme of players really embracing not only their role on this club, but then the city. It feels like we've seen that a lot in the last couple of years. Obviously, Julio has been super involved in the city, as well as Cal, now that he's, really found his ground in the big leagues and had the big moments and all that. And we're seeing that with new guys like Josh Naylor, right? Like, who is just totally invested in Seattle as well. Have you experienced the players kind of connecting to themselves, the city, in the same way in past years? Because it feels like it almost feels like a new phenomenon almost, where it feels like people are like choosing Seattle almost. Like, does that seem new to you?
A little bit, yeah. It reminds me, I grew up with the Griffey Edgar era of Mariners in the late 80s and throughout the 90s. And it does, I made this comparison last year, and I even talked to Dan Wilson about it. It does kind of harken back to that era with Griffey and Jay Buhner, Dan Wilson, Edgar Martinez, certainly that core group, really investing and staying in Seattle and raising their families in Seattle. I've heard there were just so many kids, so many young families starting up with that team in that era at that time. They all were close, and Dan Wilson's still close. Like, Rich Aurelia is his best friend, and he's gone to all of Rich Aurelia's kids' weddings. He was in Italy last year for one of the kids' weddings. And so it does remind me of something of that. You see Cal's at all these games, the Super Bowl with Brian Wu, and inevitably you'll see Adam Ray in the background of all this stuff too. But obviously Kirby was there, and Naylor and Julio too. But it's like, especially with how close like Logan and Cal have been, and Brian Wu and some of these guys, it's like you can already see these bonds. They've kind of grown up together in their 20s, and they're going to be lifelong friends, and they're going to have kids, and they're going to be involved in each other's kids' lives and all that stuff. And again, it does remind me of some of those 90s eras, but it has been a long time. And specifically in Naylor's case, I don't think I've ever seen a Mariner or any professional athlete in Seattle just feel so embraced, on both ways. Like, he reciprocated that wholeheartedly, and that was a phenomenon. I felt like in just a short amount of time, it wasn't even weeks, it felt like days. And it was like, oh, look at this guy, he's an everyman. There's everyman qualities. And how is he, 19 for 19 in stolen bases? He makes it look so easy. And then he's hitting big home runs and bases clearing doubles at the most important time. And I think defensively he's maybe better than advertised too. So you could see why they prioritized and got that deal done so early. He just fits. He's everything that they need. And maybe a little bit of a lesson too, kind of a side note here too, but for interesting from the Mariners organizational operations sort of mode here in the offseason, where they identified him not as a guy just to bring in as a free agent, but because he was so perfect with the core roster and with the setting and hitting in the ballpark, all of that. Like, I think they realized, like, again, because T-Mobile is what it is to some hitters, it's a boogeyman, right? It's just some hitters, a lot of right-handed hitters just aren't going to fare well there. That's not necessarily, and Winker's an example of a lefty too, but it's like, I think it's really important for them to kind of see guys that at least have a decent sized sample size that can hit and play in T-Mobile Park, because it's not for everybody. And so when when it does work for somebody, you got to make sure you lock him up. And obviously, that's just another facet where it feels like Naylor was just he checked every single box along the way, and they did the right thing by again, like I don't think they went to the offseason or went when they acquired him at the deadline thinking they would give him 5 years, but you had to do what you had to do to get that done, and it took a 5th year, and they did it, and everyone's happy, and everyone should be happy.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have him, and especially for a full year, just to see what his kind of effect on the clubhouse does for a full season and not just a couple months at the end. It's going to be really awesome to see how he's just going to keep being a legend, I think, in Seattle, which is very cool, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
exactly. So, obviously, one of the biggest pieces of spring training to look at is Colt Emerson. You guys touched on it as well in recent articles that most likely, if we were putting money on it, probably going to start the year in Tacoma, but he has that chance where he could absolutely break out of camp onto the opening day roster. And I know he's already down at camp and been taking BP and stuff. So just kind of what have you been noticing from Colt Emerson as far as, how he's tried to position himself in a way where he could break camp, but also, these are big expectations for a guy who I believe is only 20. Like, he is still very, very young, and he already has all these expectations on his shoulders, but it seems like he really takes it in stride. So what have you been noticing about him so far in camp?
Yeah, you talk to scouts even outside the organization, and you talk to everyone inside the organization as well. It's just everyone's kind of the same message. Like, this is a real dude. Like, he's got everything you want. Jerry DePoto yesterday when we talked to him called him a sneaky 5-tool guy just because, sort of, again, one of the comps you hear is the Seager brothers, right? He's kind of a mix between Kyle Seager and Corey Seager. Is he going to ultimately end up closer to Corey or Kyle? Remains to be seen. He's only 20 years old. A lot can happen in the next few years, much less the next few months. But, he moves well. He's going to be able to steal some bases too. Most people think he's going to grow into his power. He just has a real approach and a plan, even just in a casual batting practice. We were watching him closely yesterday. He was in the group with JP Crawford and Ryan Bliss. And, he was like you want to see, right, of advanced hitters in the first couple rounds. He was taking everything to left field. He was hitting it the other way. He was just trying to find a barrel, real, just contact-oriented approach. And then later, his last few rounds, he was trying to launch the ball, and he launched a few to right field, and he was taking it up the middle. And it's like, it's that advanced approach that, gets a guy at 20 years old, obviously the doorsteps of the major leagues. But I think what the Mariners have been really impressed with, really from the first time they met him in pre-draft meetings, and I'll be writing about this next week in the Times, but just his maturity, his overall outlook, and his competitiveness. Everyone says they're competitive. You're not going to reach the major leagues unless you're competitive. But I think it was just kind of the way he talked about things and sort of the goals he had for himself and how he wanted to fit into a team. It wasn't about him. It was about what he wants to do for a team and be a winner, and talking about World Series as a 17-year-old. The Mariners perked up when they heard a lot of that stuff because, it's hard to fake that stuff. And again, you get some vibes of Cal Raleigh just in terms of the competitiveness and the makeup. And obviously, that's Cal's at the top of the top right now, 80 grade sort of makeup and competitiveness. And I think Mariners, everyone has seen that over the last few years for sure. But I don't think the Mariners would hesitate if he goes out and just absolutely rakes and absolutely proves he's one of the best, 9 position players here this spring. Like, you might wonder, okay, emotionally, in terms of maturity, how is the person going to fit in the clubhouse? I don't think they would hesitate for 1 second with Colt Emerson in that question. He's a young guy who, in the one hand, know his place and kind of be respectful of the old guys, but on the other hand, with like, he's going to grind and want to win just as much as anybody. So I think that's probably the thing I've heard more often, as much as anything, at least, in terms of the makeup and just the emotional maturity you see out of a 20-year-old. And that's why they think he can handle something like this when, again, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of attention on him. Sometimes I have to step back and worry about, like, were we putting him in a headline just to get some attention and hype him up just because that's what people want to read? Or is this an actual real thing? It's real. Now, does that mean he's going to be on the opening day roster? Not necessarily. And again, there's other reasons why, like if they hadn't been able to execute the Brendan Donovan deal, obviously it was much higher chance he would be. But I think there was a lot of confidence they were going to get that Donovan deal done, and allows them to be more patient, certainly with both Colt Emerson and Cole Young here. You can't have the Colt Emerson conversation without also talking about Cole Young right now. And again, everyone comes into the spring training best shape of their life, but Cole Young has fewer years in that, coming in. This is, he's still in his infancy in his major league career, just turned 22, and you could tell he really hit the weight room. He did all the things that I think the Mariners asked of him, and I think he realized that too at the end of the season. If he's being honest, and we'll obviously talk to him here this spring, but he kind of wore down physically, I think, at the end of last year. You reach the majors at age 21, and there's a lot of expectations, a lot of hype. You're seeing big league pitching for the first time. He held his own for a few weeks there, really shined for a while, and obviously kind of fell off a cliff. And I think he had to learn the hard way, and I think there were some lessons it seems like he took to heart, just seeing him get some swings in and take his early ground balls here so far in camp. He's definitely, I can tell you, he was definitely penciled in at second base. And I know a lot of people will be surprised if he doesn't ultimately win that job at second base here by the end of camp.
Okay. I want to ask for time. When you say 20, 25 minutes, are we then have only a couple minutes left? Or are we going off of more like recording time? Because we're recording times at 17.
You're right. We paused. 10 more minutes or so. Actually, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, just so I know what I can.
I appreciate
all right.
I'll try not to ramble as much too.
No, you're totally fine. I appreciate your answers. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Of course. All right. So, the pitchers have started their first bullpens of the year at this time, and they're probably still ramping up. I mean, you're not going to necessarily see them going 100% still, but has there been anything that has stood out to you recently in the first few bullpens? Like any, new pitches that we haven't necessarily seen before, or any guys who, we saw Munoz touching 100 today, which is crazy for early February.
Yep. Bryce Miller and Andres Munoz are two of the guys who historically the last handful of years, they do come in a little bit hotter than most, and then they'll kind of taper off as they get closer to opening day too. But they want to come in feeling really good and really hot. I think Bryce is trying to maybe reintroduce a cutter again. We haven't necessarily asked him specifically. It is new pitch season. I'm sure Logan has 6 or 7 new pitches he's trying out. Eventually, Cal will tell him to knock it off, and he'll go back to doing what he does best. But nothing as electrifying as Mooney's kick change from last year. But over the next week or so, I'm sure we'll see a few more different ones, and that's always a fun thing to see some of those pitches develop. And then ultimately by the end of spring training, Cal's like, no, we're not throwing that. We're not throwing that one. We're not throwing that one. And the guys are who they are, but this is the time of year you need to experiment a little bit. I will say too, again, we're talking about Colt Emerson and some of the prospects. We got to see Kate Anderson and Ryan Sloan on back-to-back days here. Both were kind of as advertised. They step up when they step up to the mound, you look the part. And I think I'm certainly not a scout, but that's obviously the first thing you're going to notice. And certainly in Ryan Sloan's case, another 20-year-old who looks like Garrett Cole. Like if you put him in the Yankees pinstripes right now, minus the sort of the baby face still, Sloan would have looked a lot like Garrett Cole. Again, you hate to make comparisons and hold 20-year-olds to these unreasonable, lofty standards, but he's got that sort of makeup physically. Certainly, his lower half is exactly how you want the archetype of a big league right-handed power pitcher to look. So I know the Mariners are very excited about Ryan Sloan, and that might even be putting it mildly. He's got 4 pitches. I was talking to him today. I was like, man, that slider looked really good. I was like, what, is that your favorite secondary? He's like, no, I think my best overall pitch is my changeup. And I was like, nobody says that. When you can throw 98 plus, like how many big 6'5" right-handers say, yeah, my favorite pitch is my changeup? I was like, oh, okay, good for you. Yeah. Like if that has a chance to be a real weapon, I mean, all of us watched Felix his whole career. Like imagine, how fun that could be. Obviously, this is a franchise that loves 2 fastballs and slider guys, but to have a guy like that who could kind of give your entire rotation a different look, pretty appealing as well. And then Kate Anderson, we talked to him too. I think his intensity is what jumped out. First bullpen of the spring. It's early February, and he was getting frustrated with himself on some small misses, just different things here and there. It's like he thought he was in the College World Series again and preparing for, for a championship game or something. And we talked to him as well today, and he's like, "That's just who I am. I have really high expectations for myself and kind of a perfectionist." And you see that intensity, and I think that's part of what makes him so good. So those two guys, again, we're obviously going to be paying close attention to those guys. Part of that is just, new season. These are their fresh faces, fresh talents coming in. Everyone wants to see and know what these guys are all about. So that is a fun part of the first week. But those guys are also real. And again, don't ask me to project when they'll be here, because the Mariners, are in the enviable spot of having 5 really, really good established big leaguers, plus Emerson Hancock, who would be a mainstay in most major league rotations. So obviously it's a great problem for them to have. But, Kate Anderson and Ryan Sloan, same way Bryce Miller and Brian Wu had to come up in 2023 way ahead of it when anyone thought they would need to. Like, those guys could certainly be on the depth chart. They probably already are on the depth chart, by the middle of the summer.
I do have a quick question about Emerson Hancock. There's been a little bit of debate, like if towards the end of the last season, certainly seemed like they were trying to transition him to the bullpen kind of. And then the Logan Evans injury obviously happens, and that, is a big deal for your starting pitching depth. Do you know yet, like, if there is a plan for him as far as, is he going to be back in the rotation and stretched out, or is he really just working on being a reliever at this point?
Yeah, he's stretching out. He's basically their number 6 right now.
Okay.
They feel good about some of the other depth pieces they brought in. Cooper Criswell, Dane Dunning are veteran guys. Casey Lawrence, again, he's a lifelong Mariner, and we were joking the other day, he's going to step right into a coaching role at some point, 10 years from now when he retires in his late 40s. But again, if they just need a spot starter too, they feel good about their, 7, 8, 9 depth pieces there. But right now, yeah, Emerson Hancock is your number 6. Obviously, he wanted to be part of the playoff chase last year and was willing to do whatever it took to kind of come up and help the team, and that meant pitching out of the bullpen at that point. And there were some intriguing signs. He was touching 97, 98, and he gets that natural sort of two-seam movement. He's got the changeup. There's a lot there to be intrigued about as a reliever, but I still think at this stage of his career, he wants to, stay stretched out. And obviously the Mariners, with the Logan Evans injury, need him more as the number 6 guy right now.
Okay. To end this out, I want to do just a quick fun question for you. So there was a video today that the pitchers were doing infield work, like infield drills and ground balls and stuff, and turning double plays and all that. Mm-hmm. So if it ever came down to it, let's say there was a catastrophe where one of the pitchers needed to fill in for an infield spot. Who do you think would do the best at either second or shortstop? Who do you think would look the part the most?
If you ask them, Bryce Miller is going to be the first guy to put his hands up. He thinks he could play anywhere and do anything. He was even talking about switch pitching now too. Now that Durangelo was traded, he's like, "There's an opening for that." But the easy answer is Brian Wu. I mean, he went to college, I think, as a two-way player. Grew up as a shortstop. I don't think he started pitching until high school. Later in high school, he was always a little undersized. But he only took limited reps there with those guys. He was off doing some other workout. But he took a few reps at shortstop. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's taking thousands of ground balls there. The other guys are looked a little stiff and I don't want to say unathletic, but they looked pretty unathletic at times. And so Wu just looked like a natural. Yeah, he honestly, like, I don't think Dan would hesitate if something happened, maybe even in a crazy 10-0 game at some point if Brian's feeling good. Like, they bring in JP to pitch in a blowout, and Brian gets to go to short or something. That'd be fun. And I think he'd do just fine.
Thank you so much for Adam Jude for stopping by the channel for the first time and being able to talk with me about some of the most pressing topics going into spring training this year. Of course, you can find him writing for the Seattle Times as the Mariners beat writer along with Ryan Divish. So go check out his work, and you should pay for the Seattle Times to read his work. It is phenomenal stuff. But that's going to be it for me in this one. Of course, like the video, you can comment down below what you think about some of the topics we talked about, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I would appreciate that. But that's going to be it for me in this one, and I will see you in the next.